Hello, in this training I want to talk about masks. And we can put masks on when we're interacting with certain people or maybe when we interact with everybody. And I want to look at them a little bit closer to help you recognize what masks you might be wearing and also to look at how to take them off. So the reason we wear masks is because we're trying to accomplish something. So there's something that's good about wearing masks. First of all, they allow us to hide when we're afraid that people will discover some flaw. So that mask kind of covers that flaw, acts as a little bit of a barrier, so they can provide us a sense of protection from rejection, from criticism, from sometimes we feel like we're going to be found out as a fraud, those types of things. So that's what masks are put on for. Masks also allow us to kind of pretend that we're perfect. And I put the words kind of in there on purpose because we're pretending that we're perfect and we think that these masks make us look perfect, but sometimes people see right through that mask and see our imperfections. So we think that they're not seeing it when they might actually be seeing it. And masks are really unhealthy because they serve as, I said that they serve as a buffer in a good way, but they also serve as a buffer in a bad way. So they disconnect us from other people. It keeps us from being able to be fully transparent, fully authentic, fully ourselves. And so by keeping us from doing that with other people, it also can mask us from, the masks can also keep us from being able to really fully connect with God. So we're going to miss out on things that could be blessings from other people because of that mask, and also we can sometimes wear that mask with God. So the mask can become kind of like a prison of self-protection. I wear this mask to protect myself, but then it really boxes me in and it makes my abilities to interact with others more narrow, and it covers up and hides so many other aspects of who I am. So it can become this prison that I have to stay within the confines of. And because we're trying to hide things about ourselves from other people, there can also be a sense of shame. Shame of who I really am, shame of these flaws that I think that I have, shame of my imperfections, shame of the mistakes that I've made, and shame never feels good. What's happening deep down is what we want is to be known. So masks are unhealthy because they keep us from being known. And to be known means I can just be myself. I can be free in that. I can express my quirks and my weirdnesses and all of my imperfections and still be loved. And I believe that that's what we really want to know. And these masks keep us from ever really having that. So these are the different types of masks that I want to look at today. There's the mask of good performance, the mask of good reputation, the I'm fine mask, the acts of service mask, the mask of being a rule follower, the mask of being strong and responsible, and the comfort zone mask. I'm not saying that any of these things, trying to be a good performance, trying to have a good reputation, doing acts of service, I'm not following rules. I'm not saying that any of these are bad things. I'm saying that when they become the masks that we wear is when they're unhealthy. And it's a mask when this is how we're trying to define our identity and trying to get validation from others about our identity. First, let's look at the good performance mask. This is hiding behind your performance. So I want people to focus on what I'm doing instead of on who I am. So I'm going to throw a party and it's going to be off the charts, and I want everybody to focus on that instead of focusing on what type of person I am. And one of the questions I ask in these moments is, what are you trying to prove? And usually we're trying to prove our worth, our value, our goodness through our performance. And your performance could be awesome or your performance could be horrible, and that really doesn't have anything to do with who you are. So what we end up doing is looking for validation on who we are through our performance, but that's not the same thing. So we get validated for our performance, but we never really get validated for who we are. So the very thing we're setting out to receive, we end up not being able to receive because we're hiding behind this mask of performance. One of the other drawbacks of a good performance mask is you always excel, you put everything into everything that you do for this performance to be perfection, and then there becomes an expectation for that to always be the case, which is hard to keep up and can actually be exhausting, and at some point you're not going to be able to do that because it's just too hard. So let's look at taking off that mask. First, let's look at some scripture to help us. Ephesians 2, 8 through 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. This says very clear to me that it's not about the work that I do, although the work that I do is important, but that's really not what it's all about. It's really about who I am and the gift that God has given me. And the grace was given to me not by my works. And so validation of who you are also is not given to you by your works. So I just want to encourage you to wrap around these truths that it's okay if you can't do everything. I don't know anybody who can, and it's also okay if you're not perfect. I don't know anybody who is. And also remembering that there's forgiveness and grace for mistakes. God gave us that grace. It's there for our taking, and grace feels really good when it's received. Also, I want to encourage you to know that you are enough just the way you are, whether your performance is fabulous or not so much. And also, you are good just the way you are. Again, it's not dependent on your performance. Next, let's look at the mask of a good reputation. And here you're hiding behind that reputation. So maybe your reputation is that you are sweet, that you have this sweet personality. Maybe your reputation is that you're loyal. Maybe your reputation is that you're always the first one to volunteer. And so hiding behind that, people see the reputation instead of seeing who you are. So I just question, who are you trying to show people that you are by these actions? Who is it that you want them to think that you are? And I point out there's a difference between character and reputation. My reputation may be that I'm sweet, but maybe in my character there's still some flaw that's angry. So there's a disconnect now between who I really am and the reputation that I have to live up to. And the reputation is kind of who people think that I am, but then maybe that's not who I really am. One of the issues with reputation is that reputation can be dashed, and not even by any fault of your own. So the question becomes, do you stand on the reputation that can be taken away from you, or do you stand on character that cannot be taken away from you? So when we look at taking that off, 2 Corinthians 3:5 can help. Not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God. So I share this because my identity, the definition of who I am, certainly does not come from my reputation, does not come from my actions. I have to give credit to God for that. He created me. So in walking this out, taking off that mask, please remember that it's okay to not be perfect, and that you are enough just the way you are. You're good just the way you are. And really focus on building character instead of building reputation. Like I said, reputation is fragile. Character is solid. Now here's a tough one. Let others think of you what they will. So this means let your reputation be dashed. Let your let the view that others have of you be not so nice. Maybe people don't like you, they don't appreciate what you do, or they just don't think that well of you. That has to be okay. And you can't go around and correct everybody who thinks poorly of you. One, you may not know it. Two, you have to go around and find them all and try to convince them, which probably is going to make things worse. And so being comfortable with that, and the more I focus on and stand on my character, the easier that is for me to do, because I know who I am and I know what type of person I am, and I'm good with that. And so I don't now rely on man to tell me whether or not that's good. I know that that's good. Okay, the mask of I'm fine. This is easily recognized in yourself if you've ever done it, because you feel horrible inside. You're suffering, you're upset, you're angry, you're hurt, whatever it is. But when someone asks, you respond with, I'm fine, which isn't true. And so I ask, why is it that you need others to think that you're strong? Why is it that you need them to think that you're fine? Why is it that you will not allow them to see your suffering? And there's a risk in letting your pain show, and that risk is vulnerability. If I bare my heart to you and I'm suffering, I run the risk that you're going to hurt me more. So I do advise discernment in with whom you let your pain show. However, in general, when I do let my pain show, what that does is draw people closer to me instead of push them away. But there's that fear there of actually letting it show because it is vulnerable. So let's take this mask off. Proverbs 14:13. Even in laughter the heart may be in pain, and the end of joy may be grief. And what this speaks to me is the disconnect between what I'm showing on the outside, the I'm fine, versus what's going on the inside, which is I'm hurting. So I just want to encourage you to value your own emotions, to see that they're valid and you have every right to feel them and you have every right to express them. Now there's a question of how do you express them, because you want that to be constructive and respectful and productive. But I do want you to be able to express them, and also to value your own opinions. We all have opinions. I would just encourage you to express it as an opinion and not as a fact, so that maybe this can lead to an interesting dialogue that you never would have had if you had just pretended that everything was fine. So when we take this mask off, we do have to step into disappointment and possibly step into rejection, because we do become vulnerable to that. For me, the more I can stand on, I know who I am, and the disappointment in how the other person responds or the rejection from them doesn't change that. So if someone is going to do those things to me, if they're going to be critical of me, if they're going to make fun of me, if they're going to reject me because I shared my vulnerability, that's a reflection of them, and it's not about who I am. Looking at acts of service, it's easy to hide behind pleasing others. And again, I'm not talking that acts of service are bad. I'm talking about when acts of service becomes how you get your identity and the mask that you hide your true self behind. So you're always pleasing others, doing this for them, doing this for them, doing this for them. And so look at, what are you trying to be by way of doing? What is it that you're trying to accomplish here by always doing for others? And I think that it has to do with where your identity comes from and where your sense of worth comes from. And where does your sense of worth really come from? Does it really come from doing things for other people, or does it come from somewhere else? So some scripture can help us with taking this mask off. 1 Samuel 12:24. Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. Malachi 3:18. So you will again distinguish between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves God and one who does not serve him. So when I talk about worth, is it serving man or is it serving God? And these two scriptures tell us it's about serving God. That's where righteousness is. That's serving the Lord and serving him in truth with all your heart. So as you walk out, no longer wearing this mask, please remember that you don't always have to serve man. Sometimes we go too far. We serve them so much that we end up taking on more than they even asked us for, and sometimes we don't even do what's best for them. I want you to know it's okay. It's time now to just start a new way and shifting to pleasing God instead of others and trusting God instead of others. When I want to know my worth, do I look to man or do I look to God? And when I look to man, they're broken and they don't always give me accurate reflections back. It may be a distorted mirror reflection I'm looking into. It may be a cracked mirror. And so I'm getting this feedback that's really not about me. It's really more about their brokenness. And so the one person I can turn to and get a very clear, accurate reflection of myself every time is God. So I just want you to also know that you have worth even when you do absolutely nothing. You don't have to serve man and still have worth. That doesn't mean become a total jerk and never help anybody. But when you choose to say no and not do things just to get that affirmation, you still have worth. Let's look at rule following. And I am not saying become a rule breaker. I'm just looking at when rule following becomes your identity, your validation. And it's easy to hide behind rules because it's simple to do what you're told. You told me to do this, that's what I did. Great, I didn't even really have to figure anything out. You told me to do that, that's what I did. And following the rules kind of makes it simpler in some ways. I want you to remember that there's a difference between the letter of the law and the intent of the law. And Jesus showed us this when he healed a man's hand on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees criticized him for working on the Sabbath, which is the letter of the law. And Jesus' response was to remind them of the intent of the law, which was to do good. And what I found is if I'm going to be a rule follower, it's best if I have a different foundation for that obedience. So when I'm wearing the rule follower mask, my foundation for obedience is validation, is identity, is maybe even some accolades from people for how precisely you are doing things the way that you're supposed to be doing them. And I'm going to suggest a different way. So let's look at Romans 6:14. So you will again distinguish between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves God and one who does not serve him. Again, a reminder, who am I serving here, man or God? Galatians 3:24. Therefore the law has become our tutor to lead us to Christ, so that we may be justified by faith. Interesting, the law guides us to Christ. So first of all, I just want to encourage you to trust God rather than yourself. And the more you trust God and you follow his ways, that's easier than actually following just the rules that are given. It's a new set of rules. But that requires you to be abiding in him, to be leaning into him, to really get to know him. Now, the laws are not to be disregarded, but they're to be used to guide us to Christ. That's what the scripture says in Galatians. And what I found is the more I do these things, the more I trust God, the more I lean into him, the more I abide with him, the more I use these laws to guide me to him. That builds my faith, and the more faith I have, I naturally want to become obedient. And this is the new foundation. That obedience doesn't come from there are rules and I must follow them to be good. Instead, it's there are rules and I want to follow them because I love the Lord. Very different approach. All right, looking at the mask of strong and responsible, you hide behind your strength so others see you as strong and you never falter and you never crumble and you're always there and you just plow through. And this can also be exhausting, and you can take on so much trying to be strong that you take on other people's issues, and so now you feel responsible for them as well. So if somebody else is struggling, not only do you have to be strong for you, but you have to be strong for them and maybe even try to fix their problems. And this can be false burden bearing, which again is not a healthy stance to be in. It's not your burden to bear. And when you do this, even though it's of your own choosing because of wearing the mask, it can lead to resentment. I can resent other people because I always had to be there for them because they had all these issues and then I did all this stuff to try to help them. I can resent that in people. And also it can lead to isolation, where I'm always so busy being strong and taking care of other people that no one is ever really taking care of me. No one ever really knows what's going on inside of me, and that feels really isolating. So taking off this mask, let's look at 2 Corinthians 12:10. Therefore I am well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Okay, so we need to be content with weaknesses, insults, distress, persecutions, and difficulties. Okay, that's a challenge, isn't it? However, the solution is I'm doing it for Christ's sake, because when I'm in these places, He steps in with me. So really just realizing that weakness is just part of the human condition, and that when I stand in my weakness, instead of pretending I'm strong, God shines through. And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? When my weakness shows and God shines through that. I encourage you to let others bear their own burdens. I'm not saying don't help them. I'm not saying don't be supportive of them, but don't take it on as your own. That's the false burden bearing. So support them, encourage them, help them on the side, but don't take it over for them. And this is a hard one for some people. Let other people help you. And what I've found is when I let someone in and I let them help me, even if I possibly could take care of it myself, but I let them help me, that's a blessing to them. And so letting others know that you need them, that warms their heart for you. I have found in all the people I've done therapy with over the years that when someone opens up and shows me their ugly inside, shows me the yuck stuff that's inside, shows me their weaknesses, that it does not repulse me. Instead, it just draws me closer. And so I want you to have that too. Instead of putting on the mask of I'm strong and I can handle this, to feel safe enough to open yourself up to that and to get that reward of some encouragement, some support, and probably a lot of love from that. So the comfort zone mask is really just hiding from fear. As long as I stay in my comfort zone, I feel like I'm in control. I got things under control. I know how all this works. But if I go outside of my comfort zone, I don't know what's going to happen. And that can be scary. So really looking at what is it that you're afraid is going to happen. Is it that you're afraid you're going to be humiliated, that you're going to be rejected, that you're going to be criticized, or that something else bad is going to happen? And unfortunately, the comfort zone mask can keep us from adventures and opportunities that might be there for us. So you can really end up missing out on a massive chunk of your life. So taking off this mask, Ephesians 5:15 through 17 can help. Therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. What this says to me is I need to go out of my comfort zone, but with wisdom, right? I don't want to just run rampant and probably get hurt through this, but really being wise in my choices on where do I step out and to know where the Lord is with me in this. So handing your fears over to God can really be helpful in this. Whatever those fears are that keep you in your comfort zone, let Him speak His truth over and into those. Rest in knowing that God is with you. Wherever you go, in your comfort zone, outside of your comfort zone, He is with you. So I just want to encourage you to take some risks and start small so that it's not too scary. And my hope is that you would start to enjoy some adventure. And so it might be more of an exciting thing to go outside of your comfort zone instead of feeling so scary. And really watch for an opportunity and see if it's a gift from the Lord. If God opens a door for me outside of my comfort zone, and I know it's a gift from Him, I know that He's with me, and I know that there are good things in there for me. So when I can see that opportunity as a gift from the Lord, it makes it a lot easier for me to take off that comfort zone mask. So in general, some next steps for taking off masks. Remember that masks are of the flesh. They're almost all fear-driven. Well, I think they're all fear-driven. And so they're certainly not of the Spirit. And I ask you to look at what areas in your life are you depending only on yourself? Where are you trying to do things by your own strength instead of relying on other people and instead of relying on the Lord? And where in your life is fear the driving force? You do not want fear driving your car. It is not going to take you to some good places. So really be aware of where that's coming up for you. And look at what would it feel like to live free of that. So maybe I'll feel less safe, but maybe I'll feel safe in a different way. And how would that feel? Like, would that be exciting? Would that be exhilarating? Would that make me more likely to find something very purposeful? So I encourage you to find the positive in that. Overall, I recommend removing a mask in small situations first, because this is going to feel awkward and scary, and maybe you're not going to know what to do instead of at first. So start small. And when those go well, then you can kind of move up to some bigger situations where you can remove the mask. But it's really a matter of taking the mask off and letting that experience show you that it is safe to be transparent. It is safe to be authentic. It is safe to let people in. Challenge all the beliefs that the masks are necessary. So all of the things we looked at that the masks are doing for us, changing those beliefs can help you remove that mask. I encourage you to match your sense of self to what God has declared about you, and not to match it to what people are saying about you. Again, and a mask in general is, I'm hiding me because I want approval from man, and I'm doing it by these actions. And so when I stop looking for approval from man, because I know who I am, because I know who God said I am, that makes it so much easier to remove these masks. And I just want you to live from that identity, the one that Christ has given you, instead of the one that you're finding from man, or even trying to find from man, because you can stand on the identity that Christ has given you. What I found is removing these masks reveals your beauty. So I just want to bless you in the process of taking off your masks and stepping into a new way of interacting with other people, a new way of being, a new way of knowing who you are, and for your beauty to just be revealed to the world. I bless you.